people weren't going through Yellowstone Park in the 1940s when the war was on like they do today. But we had 8 or 10 very special fishing places that we never did tell anybody about, and we could always go to one of those fishing spots and be the only ones there.
Last year at this time, I was making a series of videos called Cynthia's Winter Games 2020. A lot has happened since then. A pandemic gripped the world, Forrest's treasure chest was found, and Forrest passed away. So what is there to still talk about? I believe we can still try to figure out where Jack retrieved the treasure chest and ultimately was Forrest Fenn's special place. This is what I'm going to do this summer. I'm calling this series of videos Conversations with Cynthia. I mostly kept silent over the 8 years I knew Forrest, which is funny to hear myself say that since I've done dozens of media projects, made a movie about the chase in 2015, and wrote a book and started a website and blog in 2017. What I mean, though, is I mostly kept silent about my time with Forrest, what took place behind the scenes, his candid private conversations, and how I stayed away from the YouTube wars in 2018 and 2019. I don't want to bore you viewers with my story of how I discovered the chase and meeting Forrest, but I feel the need to offer a bit of backstory for searchers to understand me and some of my personal confirmation bias I'm going to use to continue to find Forrest's special place, where Jack ultimately found the treasure chest. Initially, I visited Forrest a bunch of times in his house. I was so nervous the first few times, I took a flask of Bailey's with me and I drank it right in front of him. Told him I was nervous. It calmed my nerves. After the third time, he told me it was insulting to him for me to be that nervous. I thought, okay, buddy, you're going to get the real me. I guess I was okay in his mind because I continued to visit a lot. We went to lunch often, or sometimes just met at Downtown Subscription, that neat little Santa Fe coffee and sandwich shop close to his place, with the tiniest parking area imaginable for my gigantic truck. Sometimes we also met at the bookstore after he finished with other searchers. The issue was his hearing. I had to talk really loud. Sometimes we went to a quiet place. Sometimes we went for a drive. Occasionally I drove. In spring of 2016, I vividly remember driving him around Hyde Park so he would understand the logistics for that year's Fenbury. I'll never forget him telling me that I, quote, should spend my summer in Yellowstone Park, unquote. He never called it Yellowstone National Park. To Forrest, it was always Yellowstone Park. Anyway, he followed that with it, wistfully saying, it doesn't get much better than a pine forest. Yep, according to Jack, the treasure was in a forest of pine trees. Once again, in spring of 2017, Forrest nudged me to Yellowstone. This time I got the message and made my first trip to West Yellowstone and Yellowstone National Park that fall. I continued searching inside the park boundaries through the entire 2018 search season. I learned my way around the entire park, with the exception of the southwest corner, referred to as the Cascade Corner. Now, when I visited Forrest, we could discuss Yellowstone. He told me stories, reiterating that his father, Concy, and he knew every square inch. He told me how he and his father would go fishing at Harlequin Lake, how there are no fish in that lake, how he pretended to fish while his dad took a nap. Forrest seemed wistful as he called upon his memory, his words spilling forth with that reverie. He retold me stories I had read in his memoirs or his scrapbooks. He mentioned Cub Creek. Once I asked if there are geysers outside the park boundaries. He answered yes, and they are called warm water springs. Late fall of 2018, Forrest told me he was in Cody when he hid the treasure chest. Jack eventually confirmed that. I started staying in Cody and searching between it and the eastern boundary of the park. I searched many areas along the Buffalo Bill Highway, which takes you to the east entrance. After that search season ended, I sent him an email saying my 3 words were Cody, Skylight Country, and Pat O'Hara Creek. His reply, okay, now go get the treasure. I believe Jack nudged us to Yellowstone when he answered. What I will say is it's a place he wanted to die and a place that always had his heart. For me, that's a no-brainer. It matches Forrest's Ramblings and Rumblings, page 5, where Forrest wrote in 1996, "Enter Yellowstone. That's where my heart is." So now what? We know Forrest was in Cody when he hid the treasure. From there are 2 choices into Yellowstone. You can travel the Buffalo Bill Cody Scenic Byway that runs along the North Fork Shoshone River to the east entrance, which takes you over Sylvan Pass, along the north shore of Yellowstone Lake to Fishing Bridge and the intersection of the southern part of the Grand Loop Road. Or you can travel the Chief Joseph Scenic Highway, which eventually takes you to Cook City and the northeast entrance at Silvergate, taking you past Soda Butte, across the Lamar Valley, past Slough Creek, to Tower Junction and the intersection of the northern part of the Grand Loop Road. That's the route I was talking about in November 2018 when I mentioned Skylight Country and Pat O'Hara Creek, and Forrest replied, okay, now go get the treasure. This concludes my first episode of Conversations with Cynthia. Next time, I will discuss what we know is fact from Forrest and Jack, with additional conversations I had with Forrest regarding trust, the poem, and the 9 clues. Until then, stay safe.